Hey guys, Jennifer here. Thanks for letting me join in on the fun of Brainstorm Acres. I was thinking about the other day how lucky I am to have my mom, my dad, and my grandmother, as well as the experiences that we had growing up, and the resources that they have for me to be able to continually ask questions about gardening. So I figured I would hijack their channel and take the time to ask some of those simple questions that maybe you guys are wondering about right now. And the whole reason why this came up is actually victory gardens. And obviously, we might have a little bit more time now on our hands due to the situation at hand. And we might want to take some time to kind of create an additional relaxing place at home for ourselves. So I figured I'd start with, Mom, tell us a little bit about the history of victory gardens.
Victory gardens were originally started in the United States, Canada, and Great Britain and Australia for both World War I and World War II. And the point of those gardens was twofold. In those days, a lot of it was actually to produce food, because there were massive food shortages due to the disruption of the farms and having to ship all this food to the soldiers and all that kind of stuff. But it was also considered to be a patriotic thing to do, something to help pull together the country and do something positive. I think a victory garden does pretty much the same thing. It does a couple of things for us. It gives us the opportunity to produce at least a small quantity. I mean, you can take a bucket like this. This bucket was free at our local grocery store. These are food safe buckets. You could drill a couple holes in there and you could grow some lettuce in there, and all of a sudden you've got something you can do. And being able to do something gives you two things. Number one, it does give you some veggies, which is cool because you know exactly what's happened to them and everything else. But the other thing is it gives you a sense of control over some part of your life.
So, knowing what you know about where I live, how would you recommend creating your own garden?
When you see Jennifer's garden, it's gorgeous there. And this is not a fancy place. If you were to pan in the other direction on that garden, looking over the fence, it's a parking lot. They are literally carved out of the edge of a parking lot. But it doesn't matter. It's all gone away because you've got this little teeny space that's your own private spot. Pots are really a good solution for her because aside from the pavers, that's gravel. That's literally a parking lot that was packed and graveled. You're not going to dig it up and create good soil, so you need a raised bed situation the same as we have. She has one tiny little, I don't think she showed it in the video, but she has one tiny little section in the corner in the past where she's had a couple of cement blocks and she filled them with dirt and planted some flowers there. I would actually suggest expanding that. Because it's just a rental, you hate to put a lot of cash into it. So pretty much everything that she's got there is scavenged. Other pots are perfect because you could take them with you when you leave. Small built-up beds where you're adding soil that's good quality, because growing in gravel is, great for hydroponics, but not so hot for when you're trying to grow regular plants. And if you want to be super simple, you can just do something like get one of those big bags of potting soil, like the Miracle Grow that I use for potting up my plants, and cut a hole in the top of it or cut individual holes in it and plant little plants in it. Simple stuff, easy to take with you when you're done, because a lot of people rent and you hate to put a lot of money into a site that, the landlord could change his mind the next time it's time for you to re-up. And some people are on a month-by-month basis, so it's even less. Or you have to move because of your job. So when you're renting, it's particularly advantageous a lot of times to use pots and stuff that you can take with you. And they don't have to be expensive. They can literally be buckets from the grocery store bakery that you drill a couple of holes in the bottom of so your plants won't drown, and go for it. The same way as we built the buckets for making our potatoes. Same concept.
So the ever important question, no matter where I've lived, all over the United States is, what can I grow? How do I know what I can grow where I live?
She is super lucky to be in a very productive portion of the California coast. The entire area outside of town is farms, unless you get to the National Seashore sort of places, you know, where it's oceanfront. But a significant percentage of the area in that area is agricultural. It's got a very mild climate. Now, we're not all that lucky. There's places where you can go online, you pop your zip code in there, it tells you what your planting zone is. And that's not foolproof, but it at least gives you a clue. Where she is, she's got a small space. You want to focus on high value crops. And what I mean by that is something that doesn't take too much room, but is going to give you something that delights you. And when I say high value, it doesn't have to be high value financially. For instance, there's nothing better than fresh lettuce. There's very few things that are faster than radishes. That's only like 35 days. So you could take a pot like this, and you could have a little row of radishes around the outside and a couple of lettuce plants in here, leaf lettuce, or romaine, which is a very upright lettuce, would be perfect. And all of a sudden you've got something. You're not going to eat from it every day, but it's still special. I know she has some flowers. She has some herbs already. She could add to those. I think that sort of thing is perfect. You're not going to go corn, because corn is a plant that is wind pollinated, and it requires a block of corn plants in order to succeed. So you need at least a 6x6 area, and 20x20 is better to do something like corn. But tomatoes, pepper plants, those all do just really well in here. And you could plant a tomato plant in the center of this and still put little radishes around the outside of it and get both tomatoes and radishes out of the deal. So there's a lot of small scale stuff, and they actually have some tomato plants that are labeled as being like patio plants. So they're small. There's patio squash too. All things that were designed to actually be grown in buckets and succeed. And you don't have to use those specialty plants if you can't find them. Just any old determinate tomato plant will sit in the middle of that. If you're going to do an indeterminate, you may need to trellis it up something, because it's going to keep growing like a vine. But totally possible to grow a nice little supply of cherry tomatoes or regular tomatoes, some lettuce, some radishes. Those are the kind of things I'd recommend people try in a small space like what she has. Lettuce baskets, which is like different colors of lettuce in a pot that's, I think she uses 10 or 12 inch pots. Then there's also, there's a bunch of different cherry tomatoes. Tumbling Tom is one of them. There's a bunch of super 100s. There's a bunch sweet 100s. There's a bunch of different ones that if you plant the cherry tomato in the top, it'll drape over the edges and you'll have literally cherry tomatoes up in there. Now, you're going to have to stay on top of hanging planters. They're much more susceptible to drying out. But that's the biggest trick for most people, is if you're going to plant in pots, you have to be focused enough to make sure you water it or check it at least once a day, twice if it's been extra hot, and especially if it's in direct sun. And the fact that she doesn't have all sun, what I would do with some of her shadier spots is I would take a planter and put it in there and grow lettuce, because leafy greens like lettuce and spinach, and I wouldn't plant cabbage there, but pak choi and Swiss chard can all tolerate less light. Your fruiting plants like peppers and tomatoes are going to want more light. So if you have a slightly shaded area, throw some greens in there. They'll do just fine, and it'll help them to not bolt as quickly in summer heat.
What about your top tricks or suggestions for growing?
Top tricks in that area is using containers or containerized soil would be the two things I would say. And get some good stuff. Don't just try and scavenge somewhere, because you're going to need quality soil. You know it's a gravel parking lot. You don't want to fight that battle because it's not yours. If it was your gravel parking lot, you could decide to dig it up and do all kinds of things to it. It's not worth it. It's just a rental. So buy yourself some decent potting soil, some decent compost. You may want to mulch with a little bit more compost to help retain the soil moisture there, because it does get warm there. It's not warm like Phoenix is warm, and it's definitely not as dry as we are here because it's a coastal climate, so you have the moisture from the ocean, which makes it less dry. But still, I think that the top trick for her area there would definitely be using good soil, because it actually makes it a lot more like the farm fields that you drive by that are just lush with veggies. Setting up some sort of a schedule, and it might actually need to be a timer on your phone that reminds you that you have to water, because she's super busy. She's on the phone dealing with clients all day. I mean, a lot of times her first meeting is 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, her time. So she sometimes finishes early, but sometimes she doesn't. It depends. So having a timer that goes off on your phone to remind, and have that timer be something that goes off 7 days a week, and it has a name to it. And like I've got one here right now that goes off at 5:45 that says greenhouse. It doesn't take a lot of time in the garden if you're doing it every day. You got to make sure everything's watered. That's the biggest trick, because without water, they're going to die. And I would recommend, actually, unless she has a place to start seeds inside, that she just buy the plants. I was thinking about that. She gets at least late afternoon sun on the west side of that front porch, and there is a ledge there that's about that wide. Now, you would definitely have to use pots that had saucers, because you don't want to be staining the wood or damaging it by rotting it, literally, because you got too much water on it all the time. But if you got some sort of a pot that has a saucer built in, or something you could stick underneath, you could have plants there. Definitely the green leafier things would probably tolerate that location. She's made some huge progress on that garden. It was pretty grim when they moved there, and they got permission to wall off the little yard. They brought in pavers. They did all kinds of stuff. Like I say, the very lucky landlord who was extremely happy with them. And not just because they pay their rent on time, but because they're the kind of tenants that every landlord dreams about. You improving the place, you're making it lovely, you're responsible. I would say, keep up the good work. Plant a few more pots. Maybe a tomato, maybe a pepper. If you like cherry tomatoes, grab a good cherry tomato plant in one. They're super productive for the space that they take. But being able to sit there and have your glass of wine while you're staring at your hummingbirds and your tomatoes and all that stuff, it just feels good. It really does.
Oh, why do I like to garden? Well, of course, I come by it naturally. But one of my favorite things is obviously to get outside, get away from my screen. I work from home, so I'm spending probably at least 9 hours a day sitting in front of a computer. But get away, get some fresh air, hopefully some sunshine if the weather is nice. Get your hands in the dirt, do a little digging, pulling a little weeds. It certainly helps be meditative, and actually has proven to help reduce stress. Well, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited to show you what my crib looks like for my victory garden. So let's go take a tour.
Our daughter lives in coastal Northern California. Her climate is cool Mediterranean with few, if any, freeze days. Her home is blessed with a mature blood orange tree and a permanent lavender plant. Her backyard is hard-packed with poor soil. It was actually originally the edge of a parking lot, so you'll notice this gravel. Because it's a rental, it doesn't make any sense to improve the quality of the soil. It's strictly an environment in which planting in pots and planters makes sense. The blood orange and this dwarf lime tree smell wonderful in bloom. The limes are small and delicious. Her dog Gus loves sunning in the backyard. He thinks this yard is just for him. She planted this jasmine to add even more fragrances to her yard. It's doubled in size since she planted it. Her camellia tree finally had its first bloom this spring. She practices yoga and meditates in her small but elegant meditation spot, complete with a small Buddha. She made the spot using scavenged wood. Jen made this log planter by herself. She scavenged a piece of log from a tree that was damaged by a storm and carved out holes to plant flowers in. She added the bucket just for fun. We think it looks really cool, and she loves the way it looks and makes her feel. Her patio is a calming and refreshing oasis. I'd like to thank Jennifer for participating. We've been brainstorming with her a little bit about some of the different things we could do back and forth between her spot and us. You know, we see her under normal circumstances once or twice a year. We were supposed to see her actually this month. She was supposed to be in Phoenix for business, and of course all that was all canceled because of the current circumstances. We're hoping to see her this fall. May or may not happen, but it's great to see her smiling face and to chat with her on practically a daily basis about cooking and gardening and all that other stuff. And she's a really good cook, same as we are. So it's fun to share recipes and, you know, helped her make some pizza the other day and things like that. And she's experimenting too. She made pizza. She and her fiance made pizza on the barbecue the other day. So, hey, you know, and she says it wasn't perfect, but it's getting there. It's getting there. So we want to thank Jennifer for participating, and we'll have to see if there's any other clever things that we can come up with like this to do in the future. So until next time, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and we'll see you next time. Bye.